Hey, everybody, and welcome back. I'm Claire Standridge, and you're listening to RED-C Roundup. Thanks so much for tuning in today. And oh my gosh, Happy New Year. It's my first time talking to y'all since it hit 2025, and I'm really excited about today's episode. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I am not a believer in New Year's resolutions. I'm really not, because it feels like every time a resolution maybe slips or breaks a little bit, it's immediately, well, there goes that resolution. So instead of New Year's resolutions, I'd like to think of it as New Year's goals, because a goal you can always come back to. And if your goal this year is to go out of your way and serve in the community, then this is the episode for you. I'm really pleased to introduce today Myah, who is joining us because she has some experience in working with the homeless. Myah, how are you today?
I'm doing so well. I'm so happy to be here and just share with you guys, talk about the new year. It's literally so crazy that it's 2025.
I know.
Like, wow.
I can't believe it. Where did 2024 go?
I have no idea.
Flew by. Yeah. Crazy. So, Myah, before we get started, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do?
Yeah. Well, I'm Myah. I come from a family of 9 kids, and we've been Catholic all of my life. And it was when I was a teenager, I just decided, hey, like, I want to do a little more with my life. I want to feel fulfilled in who I am. And so I started with just doing mission trips with like a local community. And so we'd go to local underprivileged communities and just go hang out with the kids there and even just invite people to come to mass with us. And so as a 12, 13-year-old, that really impacted me. My dad and his family grew up in Argentina as missionaries there. And so that was always something that was a part of my heart that I knew I wanted to kind of do when I got older. And so then when I was 16, I went on my first international mission trip with the Regnum Christi, and we went to Guatemala, and that was really life-changing. And then I just started thinking to myself, well, the greatest poverty, as Mother Teresa says, is not to be loved. And that's seen so evidently here in the U.S. So how do I make a difference here? And so that's kind of what brought me to be who I am today and do what I do today, which I'll share more about later.
Wow. Yeah. That is such a beautiful story. And I love the way you summed that up in really just, it's not always in, what materially you can give. It's really that showing of Christ's love to another person who is in desperate need of it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of some background with your interest in ministry and going out in the community. How did you specifically first get inspired to work with the homeless?
Yeah. Well, I would say with the homeless specifically, it was after coming back from a mission trip I did in Côte d'Ivoire, so the Ivory Coast in Africa. And I just remember just thinking to myself, wow, like this, of course, I came here to serve them. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I felt so fulfilled in who I am in God's eyes and being able to serve those around me. So I got home and I just remember thinking to myself, in the work I do in my daily life, how do I encounter the poor? And so I just kind of sat with that for a while. I wasn't really sure what the Lord wanted me to do with that. And so as probably about a year later, I met a friend. Her name's Bella Worthing, and she works with the homeless in Omaha. And I got to take part in her mission with Hope of the Poor. And basically, they just have a little coffee garage where they just go out and they give out coffee and they just talk to the homeless. And I really love that because I've done soup kitchen things here in Houston, but it was just like that sense of encounter that is so, so important. And I realized it didn't matter how much money I had. It didn't matter how much time I had. What mattered is that when I saw a homeless person, I just encountered them and told them, wow, like you're so beautiful, you're so good. And in doing so, not only does it bring out the image of God in them, but it also brings out that image of God in me as well. And so I just started working. I just was like, wow. And when I say homeless, all I need to do homeless ministry is just encounter them and have them see God seeing through me, but also have them see someone. This is a lot of saying the word see, but basically like they need someone to see them for how God sees them. And they need to see just God in themselves and see, wow, like I'm worthy of being loved and I have love within me that someone sees. And so that was really inspiring. And I realized, wow, like I can do this at any point in my life. It doesn't mean I need to go on a mission trip to Guatemala or a mission trip to Africa, which are all very, really good and beautiful things. But it's right here. And it's that poverty of love and that I can bring anybody.
Yeah, gosh, that is so beautiful. And it's like you said, it's, making sure that these people have the experience of feeling seen.
Yeah.
Because yes, of course, our Lord sees and loves them so dearly.
Yeah.
But do they always know that? And do they always feel that?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people have, close friends with whom they can feel like friends and family to where they feel seen and heard and loved.
Mm.
But, it's so true. The greatest poverty is not to be loved. And I just love that the heart of this ministry that you're talking about is making sure that these people are encountering love with a capital L, love himself through these people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So what, I guess bouncing off of that, what is something specific that you've learned from ministering to the homeless that you feel every Christian should know, just in general, as they go about their lives?
Yeah. I think like the most important thing to know is simply that you have love within you. And that sounds like so cringy and like, okay, I'm going to hear that every Sunday, love one another. But one key thing is just going back to that scripture of love your enemy as you love yourself. And I think that we always miss that second half of the verse of like, God wants you to know that in order to love others, like you first have to see yourself as God sees you, which is as a good, as a beautiful, as a whole person made for him. And that, like when it comes to homeless ministry, when it comes to anything, simply that simple fulfillment and giving of yourself to another, a feeling like, wow, I actually have something worth giving another within me. And we have this epidemic in our society of women who don't believe that they can be mothers. Of maybe that's because they don't have the education of, oh, I don't feel like I can cook, or I don't feel like I can love a child well, or maybe they've been wounded by their own parental wounds or some sort of generational wound where they feel like they're not worthy enough of being a mother because they, number one, aren't even taught to love their own bodies. So how does a woman that's been taught to hate her body love another body, whether that's within her or whether that's a child around her that the society hasn't taught her to hold, society hasn't taught her to feed, to care for. And so you have this epidemic of women who don't know that they can be mothers, and you take these women to do homeless ministry with you and to care for another person and to see that, wow, like there's something in me that can love another well. And you start restoring that wound that has been stolen from so many women of believing that I am not good enough to be a mother. And when you take them to do this homeless ministry, you restore that love within them. You show them doesn't matter if you don't have the food, if you don't have the money to take care of these people. The greatest poverty truly is that these people don't believe they're worthy of love. One time I was on a mission trip in Mexico, and this lady, she said to us, she said, I had never had anyone tell me I was beautiful before. And this is probably a 30-year-old woman. And she grew up on the streets. She grew up, as she said, being spat on, being shunned, people rolling their eyes at her as they walked by. And I just want to encourage us to just take a moment and put ourselves in that position of that homeless woman, of she still feels the same amount of shame for being on the street as we think, oh, she's just on the street. Oh, she's just like given up on her life. But it's actually, there's a wound there. There's a shame there. And if all I can do is tell her, you're so beautiful, you're changing something within her. And that's what we're called to do, whether that's in the corporal works of mercy or whether that's just when we're walking and we see someone. We're called in the Holy Spirit in that moment to just restore love in them. And I think that's just so beautiful. At every wedding, I've been to so many weddings this year, but you always hear like some form of Ephesians 5, whether that's in the homily or in the readings. And it's really beautiful when the priest just, when it's read, whoever's reading it just talks about the part where Christ wants to restore the church to the fullness of her radiance. And that is a key part of being a Christian is, are you ready to restore the church to the fullness of its radiance? And a part of that is just encountering people for who they are. And that's a child of God. That's made imago Dei, whether that's your enemy or not, whether that's your best friend or your enemy. And that starts from that core understanding of, I can actually love another well. That simply just think about this, the power of a smile. When I smile, I give someone else that beautiful joy, that beautiful radiance to smile and then smile at another. And that's the power that we have as Christians. So when we say love another, love your enemy as you love yourself, that starts from that core understanding of God created me for goodness and he created me for love so that, and that's made full, that's made whole in loving another. And I just think that's just a key part of being Catholic, being Christian, is how do I believe I can love another? And with the gifts and talents you've been given, and will you steward those well to love another? And maybe you have been blessed financially and can help the homeless financially, but at the end of the day, it's oftentimes not what they need. They can be given all the money in the world, but it comes down to a mental understanding of their worth. And so you can actually help someone get out of poverty simply by looking at them and saying, you're beautiful. You're worthy of love. Or if it's a man,
you have value, you have dignity.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I love that. And I love how it comes back to people, whether it is someone ministering to the homeless or whether it is someone who is homeless, realizing that they have a great capacity to love. And realizing that they are also loved in return.
Yeah. And I think that is actually like a key part of when we go out to do homeless ministry, is recognizing that actually they have this great ability to love us. And we're going out there to receive that, especially if you're a woman going out and talking to a man. Are you ready to receive the love in the love that he can give you and receive that well and show him, wow, like you made me a more beautiful version of myself. And then that's allowing them to be ministers of love and to realize that they can give another joy. And sometimes that's why it might even be better to just go out there with nothing, to go out there and just let them minister to you as you minister to them. And that in its fullness is truly what it means to be human, to give and to receive. And I think that's just so beautiful.
That is so wonderful. I absolutely love that. And I love how it is a real blending, you might say, of the corporal and spiritual works of mercy in that way.
Yeah.
So bouncing off of that and, showing how really ministering to the homeless, it shows them their dignity and it shows you, what great capacity you have for love and for mission. How, in your words, how do you believe that ministering to the poor is another aspect of the pro-life movement?
Yeah. I would say, actually, I'll share a story. I spent a lot of time outside the Supreme Court during the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and I encountered a lot of people who are very wounded. And I will tell you that if it wasn't for homeless ministry that I'd done in my life, and if it wasn't for the deep understanding of the human condition, like I'm not saying I have this great understanding of it, but the understanding that we're all so wounded, we're all so broken, it changes your perspective on the people you encounter outside the Supreme Court. But it specifically changes your perspective of yourself and what you are made to do in this moment. It's easy to get caught up in politics. It's easy to get caught up in, wow, like they're just scientifically wrong. But it's that deep understanding of they're broken and they desire love. And so one time I found myself outside the Supreme Court and this lady was just screaming at me and she was saying, call me a murderer. I killed my children. I killed 3 of my children. She had 3 abortions. And in that moment, it was, I asked God, I said, well, can you help her see me in me, like see you in me? And God just said, well, what if you just saw me in her? And I think that's just a key part of everything we do, is recognizing that when we say we work with the homeless, or when we say we work with those in poverty, the greatest poverty is the hearts that are right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And that ability to love them well. And so that goes back to the pro-life movement and the work we do in the pro-life movement, because we have to restore the identity of being made imago Dei in every person we encounter. And so in that like two seconds that I had to talk to this woman as she was screaming at me, I just looked at her and I said, I love you. Because there were no other words that could come to my brain at that time. I'm not trying, obviously, I can't debate her in this moment. What am I supposed to say? Wow, yeah, you're a murderer. She wants someone to justify her anger. And that's what we have to recognize in ourselves first, is sometimes we might actually be in the pro-life movement because we have an anger within us. We want to feel justified. We want to feel forgiven for, when the Lord's just asking us to come on our knees before the crucifix and just say it like, may I have forgiveness, Lord? And so that's a key part. It starts in our own hearts, and why that's so important. But I'll take young women to do homeless ministry with me, because I believe it, as going back to that motherhood segment, that if they don't believe in the beauty of who they are and what they have to offer, abortion is just another decision. Because if they don't see the beauty of their own personhood, why would they recognize the beauty of the personhood within them that's the product of a body that they already hate and that they can't even see?
Wow.
And so we're asking these girls to recognize the personhood of a baby when we won't even recognize the personhood of them, when we won't affirm them in their own identity. And so if we take these girls to do homeless ministry and show them the beauty of caring for another, of loving another well, because we have to remember that most of these women have never experienced or had the opportunity to actually see what it means to love another well. Maybe that's because they didn't even have siblings, or whatever that may be. They're never given the opportunity. And so give them that opportunity. Show them that in giving that we receive. Show them that actually sacrificial love is beautiful and can make us feel so good and
it's
beautiful.
It's not something that traps you
Exactly.
at all. When it is like such a gift that you give, it cannot be something that keeps you, restrained or anything. Like,
Exactly.
like people try to, make marriage out to be. Like it's nothing like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just getting to that core of what we're missing in society is a revolution of sacrificial love. And we have lost that ever since the sexual revolution. And so I think just that is the reason I believe homeless ministry is a core part of the pro-life movement, is because if we don't give women an opportunity to love another and to see the beauty in sacrificial love, you have a whole world that's like, we're like, here's the bread, when we're trying to actually show them, actually there's a feast, there's a beautiful feast here, but the world's offering them happiness now. And so what if we show them the beauty of our feast? What if we show them the full feast? What if we take them out and say, you don't need to have riches, you don't need to have all of these things. What you need is just simply to be loved well and to love another well. And we don't even have to say the words Christ. We don't even have to say the word that Catholic, anything.
It's all implied.
Yeah. And you don't have to say pro-life. We don't have to even have the discussion about abortion. Just simply, it's a beautiful way to show people that there's so much more to life. And people long for that. People yearn to love another. And when these women do become mothers one day, all of them will tell you, this is a beautiful experience. But I truly believe that women that go and do homeless ministry are way less likely to ever choose an abortion, because they realize that it's beautiful to love another. It's beautiful because motherhood definitely, I'm not claiming it's the easiest thing you ever did, but because of the sacrifice for another, it can be that much more worth it. It can make you that much more better. And so I just think that's why it's such a key part of the pro-life movement, of taking high school girls, middle school girls, and boys to see that they can actually change the world in their sphere of influence. And I think that's just a beautiful part.
Absolutely. And I think there's also something integral about, like, it's just like you said, it speaks to the heart of a woman. I think it also speaks to the heart of a man,
Yeah.
you know, who
Yeah.
wants to have that challenge to
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
of himself too.
Yeah. And to
And
protect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so beautiful. It really speaks to human hearts
Yeah. Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that really kind of sums up JP2's quote when he says, man can only find himself through
Mhm.
making a sincere gift of himself.
Yeah.
How have you, through working in this ministry and the people you work with, so it sounds like you've been a part of this for a long time. How have you seen the people you work with and yourself, if you're willing to share, just personally grow
Yeah.
through this ministry, like personally?
Yeah. I think just going back to that story of the lady outside the Supreme Court, I guess what I didn't share is after she'd been yelling at me for a while and I just looked at her and I said, I love you. She ended up walking away with tears in her eyes.
Mm.
And that was such a jaw-dropping, just like my life stopped kind of moment, because I worked in the pro-life movement for years and years and I never had an encounter like that. And I just remember thinking, this is how I'm made to love. And I went to retreat soon after that, and someone was just talking about the woman who grasps onto the cloak of Jesus.
Mm.
And she was explaining that it's not, this woman wasn't healed the moment that she touched Jesus's cloak. The moment she was healed was when Jesus looked at her and said, daughter.
Mm.
And he said, daughter, your faith has saved you. But I think the key word there is daughter. And specifically as a woman in age of Marxist feminism, we don't receive what it means to be bride, daughter, sister. And think of this woman who had been hemorrhaging for like 11, 12 years. And it was Jewish tradition, if you were bleeding, that you went to a tent outside of the city. And so think, this lady had been isolated from society for 12 years, being told, your body's broken, your body's a disease, your body's unfixable. And so when she touched Jesus's cloak, yes, she's healed physically, but then he turns to her and says, daughter. And I can't imagine how crucial that was for her to hear that. I am no longer an orphan. I am his. And that has been having that switch ever since I talked to that lady at the Supreme Court, that identity switch of what I am made to do as a woman in the pro-life movement. And whether I become a mom one day or but wherever I'm at in life, it was recognizing that this is a fight simply because I'm a woman and I'm a daughter, and a daughter that's made to love, a bride of Christ. And that has just been such a huge perspective shift of, it's so easy to get tired of fighting politically and realizing that I was made for this. This is what I was made to do. And so much so, every single person in the world right now, you were made for such a time as this, because you get to love others well. And so that has just been a huge change for me in my own identity, and of seeing how God sees me, because I get to look into the eyes of another. And when on days where I feel like, wow, I have nothing to give, these people that I encounter on the streets, they look at me and they see so much more. They call Christ out of me, and I see my identity as a sister, as a daughter, as a bride of Christ, and they call that out of me. And so suddenly your work becomes so fulfilling, because you're like, wow, this is God. this is the person I am made to be one with, and I am becoming one with him on the streets with the homeless, but with the people who might have differing beliefs from me. Suddenly that realization that of why relationships matter. Relationships matter because in conflict we see the brokenness of ourselves and we're called to heal that. And so much so, when I get to encounter my enemy, and see them see something good within me, and then also see that in them, it's life-changing. You realize, this is what I'm made for. This is heaven on earth. And then suddenly, you get to love your enemies. You get to see what it's like to be at the cross with Christ crucified, and to minister to his feet. And to be the women, and that's, I think this is so integral for men as well. But as a woman, it's like, be the women who stayed. And in being that woman, you call men to that higher standard of what Fulton Sheen says, the moral level of society can be measured by the level of its women. And so be the women who stay, and so that the men will come back and they'll fight for you. Be a woman they want to fight for. Be someone who receives love well. And when you realize that the fullness of your identity is simply in just receiving the love of others well, it literally changes everything. And
it certainly would change everything about, all the struggles and the division that we're seeing in our society. That, we all know that division is not sowed by the Lord. And just when we see people who refuse to have a reasonable discussion with someone who they disagree with, when they feel like they need to block out any voices that don't agree with them, and even like as it can be difficult, if you don't feel super solid in like your response as a Christian, if you're like, oh, I'm probably not knowledgeable enough to really respond. It's like, no, you can respond. All you need to respond with is just saying, I'm here. I hear your experience and I love you.
Yeah.
To me, the fact that we disagree is not a reason why we cannot be friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so integral. And, even as a Catholic, I think it's really hard to even just defend the Eucharist. But we have to recognize that why would somebody want to believe that this is Christ's body and blood when from this very same pulpit where we say that every single week, we also can't teach women about the beauty of their bodies. We can't tell women that their body is good and beautiful and that they don't need to get on birth control when they're 12 years old, that actually that God created their body as good, and that their cycle, there's biomarkers in their body that they can naturally like heal. And I bring that up because we have this epidemic, specifically in our youth, of not being able to see their bodies as good because we're not protecting and defending them and teaching them the goodness of their bodies. So actually, if you ever want to, going back to just like defending the body, it's just like these women that you find on the streets that aren't even told they're beautiful. We can't get them to believe in the beauty of Christ crucified and Christ in the Eucharist if we don't start with the beauty of their body. And so if you're having a discussion with someone, whether that's about Catholicism, whether that's about a political matter, recognizing in that moment that there's a conflict here because there's a deeper wound here. And
it's not just this idea, this nameless figure. This is an individual.
Yeah.
In front of you.
Exactly. And this individual is a part of the body of Christ. And we are made to love them and bring them into that deeper encounter.
That is so, so beautiful. And I love how, everything just comes back to identity in the Lord. It comes back to just, the insights of JP2 from Theology of the Body, like it is all connected because, humans, we are body and soul.
Amen. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so going on to, I guess, specifics. So, we've said, just the power of a simple smile, looking someone in the eyes, it can do more for them than maybe we realize. But from a practical standpoint, how have you found is, the best way to perhaps encounter the poor? So say either you're walking in downtown, there's somebody, just sitting on the sidewalk. You can tell that they're homeless. Or perhaps you're driving around town, you come to a red light, somebody's holding a sign that says, "Hey, please help me." As someone who's been in this ministry, what do you suggest?
My biggest suggestion is actually just smile and make eye contact and just show them that they're worthy of human connection. Like if you don't have time in that moment to do anything more, don't look away because you don't have anything to offer, because that's actually comes back to yourself. Why do you believe you have nothing to offer? And then just look them in the eyes and smile at them. My favorite thing for women is just to say, "Hey, you look so beautiful," or pick something that you love about their fit. Whether it's like their shirt has a pretty pattern, just make them smile. Like make that your goal, just to make them smile too. And for instance, I was downtown one day and I was heading to the church for a performance and like an organ recital or something. And I was just driving on the road. I was at a stoplight and there was this lady and she had a sign, and I just rolled down my window and I said, "I have nothing to offer you, but may I know your name?" And she said her name, and I was just like, "I'll be praying for you," and said her name back to her. And I think that's so important because a lot of people aren't called their name. And I think just like where you learn that in like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People or whatever, it's just like to say someone's name back to them. Well, that actually matters in homeless ministry as well. So if you're at a stoplight and you have time, roll down your window and say, "Hey, may I know your name?" Ask them their name, say it back to them and say, "I'm going to pray for you. Is there any specific way I can pray for you?" And you obviously, if you're at a stoplight, you probably don't have time to pray for them now, but just say, "You look so beautiful. You're so good." And then just keep going. In this particular instance, I actually was able to park because I had time and I was downtown. I was near my destination. I was able to park. I got on my car with her and I just prayed with her for a little bit. And then I went into the church, did what I needed to in the church, left, and she was sitting there with her friends. And I prayed with all of them. I gave them all big hugs. I had some water, go to the church and grab a couple water bottles, give them some water and just sit with them, hang out with them. And as we were leaving, she puts her hands on me. I was with a friend at this time. She puts her hands on me and my friend's shoulders. And she just said, "This may sound really weird, but you guys are like the Maid Marians of Houston." And it was just like that moment of like, I wasn't at the soup kitchen. I wasn't doing anything crazy. I just had a little extra time. And I just said, "Hey, you're beautiful. May I know your name?" And over Thanksgiving, I just made a couple plates of food and I was just like, "Lord," like I literally made 7 plates of food and I went out and I said, "Lord, put the people in my life that you want me to talk to." So I ended up sitting on the ground with this guy and we just like prayed, and he's like, "I just knew someone was going to sit down and pray with me." And you don't have to offer to pray for them if you don't think that's the vibe. Just say, "Hey, like," he had a guitar and I was like, "Love your guitar. Like, what do you play?" And then that leads to something more. And he ended up being like, "I just don't know how to pray." And I was like, then I got that moment to just minister and be like, there's a safe place in your heart, wherever you feel safest. And you just get to sit there and just say, "Lord, where are you at in this room? And why do I see the Lord on the other side of the room? Do I feel rejected?" And we just got to sit there and hang out and have fun. And then sometimes it's not even the homeless. Sometimes it's just like, there are a lot of times people like Mexican workers sitting out there for work and they happen to be out there on Thanksgiving Day. And we just went over there and gave them a couple pies and just like made their day. And so I just, and in doing so, it makes my day. They made it the best Thanksgiving I've ever had because I got to sit down with that guy and I got to minister to all these people. And it was only a few of them, but those few matter. And those few will probably go change someone else's life that day because of your encounter. And I remember like I had an extra water bottle and I looked at that lady in Houston. I said, "Hey, I have this extra water bottle. can you go find someone who needs it too? And so I guess that's kind of like practicals of like what you can do. And of course, assess the situation, make sure you feel safe.
Of course.
And, but if
it's 3 a.m. and
probably not the best idea.
No.
But if you can do something in the moment, and also just side note for the women, one of the things, I've taken a lot of human trafficking training for the work I do, and one of the biggest things that gets a trafficker actually not to do something like to kidnap you is actually just to make eye contact with them, because it shows.
I did hear that a few years ago.
It shows that you're watching and that you have some defiance basically within you. So even if that's the only reason you make eye contact with somebody, just eye contact and smile. I mean, that's good too. But yeah.
Oh, and that's a great tip on how to stay safe, because I know some people might be unsure about going out there physically in ministry because they're like, I don't know about, my physical safety.
Amen.
But that's a really, really good tip, good advice. And, of course, always good to stay around areas where there's lots of people and things like that.
And if you're going to go do homeless ministry, like on Thanksgiving, like I brought a friend along. I normally always do that with another person. And, but there's always just smile and make eye contact and just keep going on in your life. And I would never probably just get out of my car and talk to somebody if there wasn't another person with me, or just or if it was an open city street, then I would do that or something like that. But one thing like we love to do and is just like on Mother's Day, we'll do a Mother's Day picnic for all the local homeless women. And that's just a beautiful way to just say you're beautiful and you're worthy of motherhood. And
that is so wonderful. I love that. So with the few minutes we have left, I guess, what are your, final closing thoughts?
Sure.
What's some, last advice you want to give to our listeners who, might be interested in a ministry like this, but they're, not sure how to get involved, or if they want to get involved? And maybe if you could recommend some specific ministries that they could, start to get involved with, people to reach out to.
Sure. Well, just number one, just starting off with you can do anything in your sphere of influence, get some friends together and just go look for homeless and just go hang out with them. Like that's so easy. And you can do that with your local young adult group, just, even if it's just 4 or 5 people. Number 2, I would recommend checking out Hope of the Poor, which they're based out of Omaha. So that's the my friend Bella that I did with her, but they do mission trips to Mexico City, which I would highly recommend doing if you just kind of want to get a kickstart in this. The third thing I'd recommend is checking out my organization, Right to Know, where what I said, we take these young women out to do homeless ministry. And actually a part of our work is we offer hormone workshops for the homeless women and for the girls that we take out with us. And so I think that's a really, really key part. You don't need to be a part of Right to Know to do that as well. It's just, if you know some young women who want to do homeless ministry, get a group together, go out, go invite all the homeless women to a little spa day out is what we call it. Work with a local doctor. If you're a local doctor, nurse practitioner, Creighton instructor, whatever it is, we just offer a hormone workshop to say, hey, like your body's good, your body's beautiful, and here's how it works. And then it's life-changing. It's life-changing for all of these women. So those are like, I guess the 3-4 things that I'd highly recommend doing. But just remember that there's always something you can do, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you're a single person and you're working a 9-to-5 job, there's always something you can do. And even if that's just you go to the local soup kitchen, you just say, hey, can I just sit with the people and encounter them? And that's going to speak volumes to these people of this homeless, of those in poverty. If someone just wants to sit and encounter and hang out with me, and how good is that?
For sure. And I'm sure you could also bring a board game as well. Just spend time with them,
Exactly.
Family game night, right?
Yeah. They can become some of your best friends. Let me tell you that. They can become some of your best friends. And simply by them just having another human that just says, wow, like there's something to love within you. And that could be what pulls them out of whatever woundedness they're going through. And just to end with I found myself praying last Lent of where the Lord wanted me. And the Lord just said, just at the foot of my cross, ministering to my feet. And I was like, what does that mean? And there was a specific crucifix that I was at. The Lord was just looking down. He said, because when you're at my feet, I can make eye contact with you. I can see you. And the Lord just wants each person to see how he sees them. And you get to be that person for every person you encounter. And in that moment, you also get to see how they see God in you.
That is incredible. And thank you so much for joining us for RED-C Roundup this week. Thank you for just really giving us your insights into this wonderful ministry. Everybody, if you're listening right now, if you're watching on YouTube, get involved. Get involved. It's 2025. It's a new year. Set your New Year's goals, not resolutions, and just get out there. There's so many people to encounter. They could be right down the street, and they need Jesus too. Don't forget to tune in next week for RED-C Roundup, and don't forget to, if you're watching on YouTube, like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Make sure you show us some love so that we can get this video out there to more people. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. I'm Claire Standridge. Talk to you next time.